but our mindset has way more to do with us achieving any goal we set or failing than any of our actions do.
Welcome to the Business of Happiness podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Taryn McCarthy, and I'm so grateful to have you here with me again today. Thank you so much for joining me last week when we talked about painting a picture of success, which is so critical as we look at 2021 going forward here. And today we're going to continue this wonderful discussion with an incredible guest. I cannot wait for you to meet him. I've seen him online and I've been so excited to get to know him in person. So you're going to get to see the beginning of our discussion right here live on this podcast. And then next week, we're going to be talking about leaders leading leaders. What does that mean and how powerful that can be in business? But before we talk about leadership right now, I want to introduce you a really incredible guy who seems to be leading the fitness world here in Maine. He is the founder and CEO of WorkFitMe, and he is a self-described mobile concierge physical therapist. I'm fascinated. I can't wait to hear. He is a husband and a father of a beautiful little girl, and this is him, Dr. Phil Finemore. Dr. Phil, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for having me. This is fantastic. I'm really excited about this, and over time here, as you and I have been introduced to each other, I've been a big fan and admirer of you and some of the work that you're doing and some of the conversations that you've been having both through social media conversations and the podcast. So
Awesome.
Thank you very much for having me on.
Well, I'm honored. Thank you. I have to tell you, you don't know this about me, but my mother is a physical therapist. So
wow.
Anybody who's a PT has a very big, warm place in my heart. But I'm
That's
dying
awesome.
to hear how physical therapist, how you have kind of defined and redesigned your business model as a physical therapist. Can you tell us a little bit about your professional journey?
Sure. Yeah. It's been a lot of that change has really happened in a very short amount of time, as I think it has for a lot of people this year. I went to, so starting kind of from the beginning, I went to Husson University in Bangor, Maine. I did my undergraduate and my doctorate in physical therapy all at Husson. And since getting out of school and moving down to Southern Maine, I've been working in the outpatient orthopedic world in outpatient physical therapy clinics. That's sort of always been my passion, being a patient in a clinic like that, along with working with a really awesome athletic trainer at my high school, Nick Thompson. Nick, if you hear this, shout out to you.
To Nick Thompson.
Shout out to Nick Thompson. He kind of helped me down this road a little bit. And so that was where my passion really was, because that was what got me into physical therapy in the first place. And just being in that world for a little over 5 years and seeing the way our current medical model is set up, we're very tertiary in the way we handle things. In other words, we treat things after they're a problem, right? Yeah. And there's not a huge focus on prevention, which is something that in school they do try to push a little bit, because our field is very well equipped to help people prevent things. We're very well equipped to help people treat problems they currently have, but that also makes us able to prevent them from ever happening if we can catch these risk factors early on. So I've always kind of had that in the back of my mind, but the way the field is set up made it kind of hard to do that, and even hard to show people the value in that. So fast forward to March of 2020, being furloughed from the outpatient clinic I was working at due to the pandemic, I almost just without thinking was like, I need to do something to make sure that I can sort of control my own destiny here a little bit. It's just something that kind of I was drawn to. And my practice actually started out as more of a way to work on that prevention, specifically for people who are shifting to a work from home model, and helping them and their employers avoid unnecessary workplace injury. due to this shift in behavior and pattern and physical stress. And it sort of organically turned into the mobile physical therapy practice that it is now. But it all came from wanting to have a little bit more control
Yeah.
over my destiny, and the freedom that initially gave me to then shift my focus on, yes, I'm going to help people who come to me who have current problems, but be able to start getting the word out there that, hey, we can do more than just help you once something's already been a problem for weeks, months, years. We can help you prevent that from happening. And that sort of passion that's been with me throughout my whole career, even through school, it has really been a driving force behind why I'm putting all of myself into now treating my clients the way that I think most benefits them.
That's so great. I think one of the biggest strengths of businesses in 2020 have been those businesses that were able to pivot when they needed
Yeah,
to. And really those are the ones, and please tell me if this is true for you, who have seen even greater success as a result of it.
I think so. Yeah, you know, I hadn't really. I've heard of this sort of model, the mobile model, and in certain areas of the country, it's definitely more popular. There isn't much of it at all here
Mm,
across the state of Maine, and any that there is sort of very small word of mouth type type stuff. But again, my passion has always been getting the message out to people.
mhm.
Showing people the power of what physical therapy as a field can do, not just what I can do, but the profession can do for people. So I wanted to make sure. I always knew that if I was ever in charge of, because there was a time right before I got furloughed actually, that I was talking with my boss about together opening another location
Mm,
of the clinic I worked at. And I knew that if I did that, I would definitely want to be not doing things the way they've always been done, right? As far
mm.
as getting the message out and marketing and all of those things. So yeah, the pivot became part of that. And I think you're right. Yes, the businesses that have been able to do that and get the message out there well during what we've experienced over the course of this year, yeah, I think they've done quite well, because it's been pretty well received from those that have heard about it and become valued clients of the practice.
That's awesome. So are you actually traveling to different locations to find your patients, or are you doing things online in a virtual manner as well?
Both.
Okay.
So I've done both earlier on in the pandemic when things were still a little unknown,
Yeah.
and just due to the nature of how I thought my business was going to be set up. Like I said, it kind of organically turned into the actual mobile physical therapy practice. But yeah, I started out doing almost all virtual stuff for the
Yeah.
first 2 to 3 months that that I started the practice. But once I started doing more of the mobile stuff, almost all of it now is in person, and I'm able to see people in their homes and their offices if that's doable or allowed. I There was a client I was working with for some time where we would meet at the Eastern Promenade in Portland
Cool.
at the gazebo, or even just outside. We would just
Yeah.
just do our session outside, because that's where she wanted to do her session.
Wow.
And the views were awesome. So it was which was really cool to have that be your,
Yeah.
to have Casco Bay be your office for the hour and 20 minutes.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so I go to all of my clients where and when it's convenient for them. And I've found that doing that model has actually made things maybe even a little more successful than if people were coming into the clinic. That little bit of freedom, that little bit of convenience
Yeah.
makes it a lot easier for those people to make and keep those appointment times, because all they have to do is be available for the 1 hour with me. They don't No travel time, none of that. I figure all that out. I just show up and we work together to help them get better.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, as you know, you're on the business of happiness. How
Yes.
do you think that fitness affects, or does it affect happiness? In your experience, what is the relationship between health and fitness and happiness?
Oh, they go 100%. They go hand in hand. Anecdotally, I think we all know that when we do something physically active, whether it's something that we do all the time or whether it's we haven't done it in a while and we
Mm,
do it again, you
mm,
get that sense when it's done. For some people, it might be more relief, like, oh, it's done, right? But once it's done, there's that feeling of accomplishment.
yeah.
There's that feeling of almost a little bit of like euphoria.
Hmm.
And we know on a very scientific level, an anatomy and physiology level, that our brain and our nervous system release those chemicals, those neurotransmitters that make us feel good after we
Mm,
do physical activity. So scientifically, yes, definitely. But again, anecdotally, just the way that people feel and the way that people that I work with respond when the stuff that we're doing starts to gain some good traction and yield those results that they're looking for, that some people have waited a long time and wind up getting a little faster than they thought they could, just with the right guidance and the right direction.
yeah.
um Again, anecdotally, those happiness and the type of that physical activity and just feeling better about
Mm.
your health, feeling that you're in better control of an area of your health that you felt like you weren't in control of before, all of that is directly related to happiness for sure.
Yeah, I had a front row seat to this with my son over the pandemic. His high school was shut down, and right before the shutdown, when he was all virtual, he'd been running almost every day, and he went from running 4 miles a day on his cross country team to zero exercise just because he couldn't figure out how to plan it into his day. And the depression and anxiety and
Yeah.
stress and lack of sleep and poor eating habits. I mean, within days, I'd say probably a week, and suddenly we saw a different kid in front of our eyes. And I think
Yeah.
that's so true for adults, but maybe we deny ourselves of these symptoms and we don't see them until we get really low.
hmm I think you're exactly right, and some of those, especially if they're old habits, for
Yeah.
someone like your teenager, those probably weren't habits of his, right? Like not exercising, not moving, maybe not eating quite right, were never habits. But for some people, specifically adults, they might have had times where they've struggled with those things through their adult life, and even if they've been doing well with breaking that pattern and finding a new pattern, making that lifestyle switch, sometimes all it takes is something like, oh, I can't go to my gym anymore.
Right.
My whole routine has just changed.
Right.
Boom. All of a sudden, the first thing I stop doing is exercising, and maybe I do half of a routine at my house with just some body weight or a little bit of equipment I have. But the minute that one thing shifts away from what you've been doing,
Mm,
some of those old habits come right back into the fold. Or you just replace good habits. Maybe you were someone who was really good and didn't struggle with some of those things prior to making some changes, but you start replacing those good habits with some new habits that aren't so great.
absolutely.
um, just because,
Yeah.
right? Like, I'm stuck at home and can't get out and do this or this like I normally would, and you start getting into some things that aren't so great. So just like improving our health, improving our fitness, and getting some physical activity go hand in hand with our happiness, not being able to do those things or just not doing them sends us the other way.
Absolutely. So if some of our listeners here are recognizing this trend in their own lives. Maybe they had before the pandemic been living a different fitness profile, or maybe even within the past few months or around the holidays, and they're recognizing, yeah, I've been feeling a little bit of a slump, and maybe that's due to losing some of that great fitness ritual that I had beforehand. What suggestions would you have? Because I think sometimes it can be overwhelming to look back at our old selves and say, a year ago I was running a marathon and now I'm just lying on the couch all the time. So, what suggestion do you have for those of us who want to get started but feel so overwhelmed at going back to what we used to be?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Like any major shift you make in your life, whether it's physical activity, whether it's your diet, whether it's starting on a new career path, going back to school, whatever the case might be, this kind of the best blanket advice that I think that fits all those situations is you just have to start with one thing
Mm.
and have a one foot in front of the other mentality, right? A baby doesn't start walking, right? They get on their belly, they can hold their head up, they can then kind of move themselves with their arms and army crawl, then they can crawl, then they can pull up the stand, and then they can walk, right? So if it's something that you've never done before, but even if it's something that you were doing that you kind of fell off the wagon, so to speak, and you want to get back to doing, you're still going to have to take some baby steps. You're not going to be able to go from 0 to 100, even if you were at 100 before you went to 0, right?
Mhm, mhm.
Especially if there's more than a few days or a week or two in between the 100 and the 0. It's one step at a time. And if it feels overwhelming, just pick one thing to focus on, make it a realistic thing,
Mm,
put a time frame on it, and just focus on that one thing.
I
Okay,
love
so
that.
let's frame that a little bit, right? Because what I said was kind of vague. So let's say physical activity is the thing you want to work on, and your overall goal is that I eventually want to be at a point where I'm working out 5 days a week for an hour,
Mhm.
and I'm going to work out in the morning because that's the best time that it fits into my schedule. That's a great goal to have. Put a time frame on that that's down the road,
Mm.
3, 6 months, a year even.
Hmm.
But give yourself some short-term goals and say, but right now
Mm.
I'm going to work out 3 days a week at 5 a.m. And this is what I'm going to do for a workout, and pick a workout that you like,
Mm.
something that you enjoy doing so that you're actually more likely to do it.
Mhm.
So no, that's not 5 days a week for an hour. Maybe you start at 3 days a week for half an hour,
Mm.
walking your dog or getting on a spin bike or doing a YouTube workout or doing a yoga class, something that you enjoy. Start small, and again, give yourself a time frame for that. Say I'm going to do that for a month. At the end
Mm.
of the month, reevaluate. All right, I can add another day in,
Yeah.
and give yourself some benchmarks, give yourself some wins along the way, and allow yourself to prove to yourself that you can make this change. But if you go from I'm not doing anything to I'm going to wake up every morning at 5 a.m. and
Yeah.
work out for an hour, and I'm going to do this crazy total body hit workout that you've never done before that you don't really like because it's not something that you like to do. Guess what? Morning number one, when that alarm goes off,
Yeah.
it's snooze city. You're gonna be hitting that snooze button,
Yeah.
and you're gonna roll over and go back to sleep, and then you're gonna try again tomorrow, and the same thing's gonna happen. So smaller chunks, one foot in front of the other. Pick one thing to focus on. Make it realistic, but something that also gets you to where you truly want to be within a time frame that you want to be in, so that you can hold yourself accountable to that time frame.
Yeah, that's great advice. I love that. I love the time frame aspect of it as well. That's really, really fire. You know,
Yeah.
I've been following for my listeners, I've been following Dr. Finemore on his Facebook, and we'll tell you how to find him. But one of the things that he does on Facebook, which I love, I'm so grateful to you for providing this value to our community, is he has these very frequent live interviews with experts in multiple fields. And so I've been kind of trolling you and learning so much from you. Thank you. And one of
Well,
the
thank
things
you.
you speak about often in your lives is this idea of lofty goals. So
Mm,
tell us a little bit about what is a lofty goal and what is the importance of having lofty goals?
sure. Yeah. Well, yeah. So this week in particular, this past week, the week before we recorded this, I was doing a what I called the first annual WorkFit Maine Wellness Week,
Cool.
where I wanted to bring in some professionals. It was right before the holidays, and give some people some of this advice in different areas that'll impact our health and wellness. And yeah, a lot of our conversations wound up right here. And I being a physical therapist, I help my clients with their goals, right? So it's goal writing, from a rehabilitation standpoint, is something that we learn, and
Mm,
then by working within the field and working with some of these other great experts, you kind of learn how that can be more applicable to a human being, not just a medical note. Which those goals are very different things. But having a lofty goal, and almost a goal that scares you a little bit, is something that I learned from some of my coaches and mentors when I started my mobile business and decided that I really needed some help along the way to do that. And the reason for that is because, as cliche as it sounds, we are capable of a lot more than we think we are.
Hmm.
But our mindset has way more to do with us achieving any goal we set or failing than any of our actions do.
Yeah.
Because if your mindset is off, you're never going to take those action steps to actually achieve that goal.
Yeah.
So let's go back to our sort of fitness example again, or a weight loss example, and tie it in with that fitness example. If saying I'm going to lose 150 pounds in a year scares the heck out of you, that's your goal. Be
Wow.
almost make yourself uncomfortable a little bit. But again, don't just leave it at that, right? Because you now don't have a plan to do it. You
Yeah.
need a plan. You probably need some guidance on
Yeah.
that plan from some professionals that can help you get there as well. Just like the example I just gave of myself and having some coaches and mentors within starting my practice. I had very, very limited idea of how to do that. And these people have taken what I'm trying to do and done it successfully for years.
Yeah.
So they are going to help me along the way. So find some of that guidance. But yeah, having the lofty goals gives you an idea of what we're capable of and where our mindset really needs to be, and then you can work backwards from that lofty goal to create smaller goals and action steps and action plans that will get you to that goal. But
Yeah.
get yourself a little uncomfortable, and then again, having some guidance along the way and have those smaller goals underneath that lofty goal are going to help you do more than you think you're capable of. And guess what? If your goal is 150 pounds and at the end of the year you've lost 80, you still lost 80 pounds.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? Incredible, right? So
Yeah.
setting those lofty goals is great, because if you fall a little short, but as long as you're not in the same place you started from before, you still won. Like
Yeah.
you still did something that you set your mind out to do, and probably surprised yourself along the way. So those lofty goals have a lot to do with our mindset and
Yeah.
helping us get there mentally.
I love that idea of setting a goal that's not just what you think you can achieve, but really scares you, that really pushes you. I think that's so critical. I think sometimes we absolutely underestimate what we can do and we fall short on our dreams.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, tell us about the lofty goals that you've set for yourself in this year in your business, and kind of where you're scared to go, but excited to adventure towards.
Sure. Yeah. The sort of my overall lofty goal is to be the number one most sought after mobile physical therapist in the entire southern Maine region, or you know what, the state of Maine. I
Love it.
want, when people think of mobile PT, I want them to think of WorkFitMe, Dr. Phil and WorkFitMe. That's what I want.
Mhm.
Um, that's what I want people to think. And within my first, because March will be a year of starting my LLC, the end of March. Within a year and a half of starting my LLC, I would like to be at a point where I could be bringing someone else into my practice to help it grow, to be able to help more people. That's
Cool.
sort of my big goal. That I started this, and initially I was like, I just want to be able to provide for my family. I want to
Mm.
have the stability and the freedom that you get as an entrepreneur, provide for my family, and not have that rug just go out from underneath me
Yeah.
without me being able to control it,
Yeah.
which is what happened when I got furloughed, right?
Yeah.
But if I'm running the show, it's no one's fault but my own, right? I have no one to blame but myself. But again, that lofty goal that scared me was like, whoa, you mean I could like
Mm.
be a boss? Like I could manage people, I could hire people
Yeah.
that would also share my vision and allow me to help more people. So just the idea of that was very, very daunting. But again, once you get into it, you get those smaller goals, you start hitting some of those smaller goals, and you realize that it's achievable. It helps your mindset going, you know what, I could do that. I just have
Yeah.
to do these things to get there. So I would say those are my big my two big lofty goals that I've sort of set for myself as I've uh, gone through this process and got myself from starting the practice to where I am now.
So what scares you now? Since you've made this look so easy. I mean,
Yeah.
you've it's been such a short amount of time and you've already achieved so much. I mean, I didn't know about you, and now we've got so many people who are listening to and hearing your message. So what scares you now?
Yeah, I think what scares me is that those goals that I've set out, you can almost feel them becoming like achievable.
Mhm.
Um, which I think is how they're supposed to feel if you're actually taking the steps to get there.
Yeah.
And you start seeing some of those dominoes fall a little bit. I would say that that's what it is, and the goals themselves, I think, might not be as scary because they start out that way, right? When you get to a point where you're like, "Holy cow! If it sustains like this, that goal is going to happen a lot faster."
Mhm.
It then becomes okay. I know it's achievable. The goal itself isn't scary anymore. It's how do I make sure I do it right so that I hit the goal.
Yeah.
I've never had to hire somebody before. I've never had to come up with the processes of stuff like that. And although I'm not quite at that point yet, I know in the back of my mind that as I go, that's something I'm going to have to work through and make sure I do the right way. So the some of that success is kind of scary, especially if it happens a little faster than you thought. Even just some of it, right? Not all of it, but even if some of it happens before you thought it was possible to happen or thought it
Mhm.
was realistic to happen, it's like, okay, now I can't mess this up. Right? Now I need to keep pushing towards those goals and make sure that I get there. So I think I guess at this point there are certain parts of the process of reaching those goals that is a little more terrifying than the goals themselves because they feel way more attainable now than they did even when I set them.
Yeah, there's that beautiful quote you're reminding me of, and it escapes me now who was the original author of it, but what scares us most is not that we might fail, but that we might actually succeed.
Mm,
And that I think is so true, is we hold ourselves back from those lofty goals because we're almost afraid of what that might look like. So I applaud you for being a beacon of, fighting through that fear and really reaching for the stars. That's awesome. And by sharing your story, you really are encouraging other people to do the same. So thank you for that. Thank you.
well, thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
The one difficult thing I think many of our listeners have felt, especially in starting a new career or a new career path, is maintaining your happiness along the way, right? Especially with a new business, it can absorb every minute of the day and overwhelm us, especially when we're going from having relied on a paycheck that somebody else is insuring to now making sure that you're creating that paycheck for yourself and for your family. So,
Yeah.
how have you been able to, or have you been able to stay in a happy zone and a joyful zone throughout this process?
There are definitely times when you feel that it's not
Yeah.
so happy, but those moments, even though they take up more of our they consume more of us, especially in that moment, and they're very easy to dwell on. I think
Mm,
in life in general, we all tend to dwell on more of the negatives. Well, think of trying to grow a business, right? It, if people loved you, they might not go run and sing your praises to everyone they meet, but if they hated you, they're going to tell everybody,
yep.
right? So, and we're all like that. Even if we put business aside, we all tend to we don't celebrate the wins as much as we mourn and mull over the losses.
Yeah.
And so I find that even though those things, you almost feel them more, those stressful moments, those harder moments, I feel them more. But the moments that make me fulfilled and continue to reinforce why I made this decision in the first place are definitely more plentiful. There's
Mm,
more of those moments. So, and sometimes I find myself really having to stop and think about that.
Mm,
When something tough does come up, like, hey, it could be worse. And
mhm.
think of all these other things that are happening that are going so incredibly well. And that's a process.
Yeah.
It's hard to do, and it's a practice almost. And the advice I've gotten time and time again is to enjoy that process, enjoy those ups and downs and those ebbs and flows, but try not to go too high with the highs and too low with the lows. Learn how to
Yeah.
keep those emotional reactions in check, but enjoy all of them.
Yeah.
And you have to practice doing that, I
Yeah.
think. But when you realize that the only thing that's going to stop you is you, like if you just
Mm,
stop trying or you just decide to shut the business down, that's the only way its doors are going to close, right? I
yeah.
mean, that's at the end of the day, that's the only way. If you're truly doing everything you can do, and you can honestly tell yourself, I'm doing everything I can do, you're not going to completely fail, right? And that's the beauty of it, is you always have control over it. So
Absolutely.
yeah, I
And
think that's
very similar to your analogy of if you've only lost 80 pounds when you were trying for 150, you've at least lost 80 pounds. And, the same
right.
is true. The same is true in business, with our lofty
Yeah,
goals. I
yeah.
think one of the things that struck me in a few of your interviews, you were talking about celebrating the wins. And I think you
Mm,
alluded to it right there in that response is tell me more about that, what that means to you, and the importance of celebrating the wins, the small wins and the big
mm.
wins.
Yeah, I think it's some of that is benchmark to show you like
Mm,
where you came from, you know,
mm,
because we all tend to look at, well, I'm not where I want to be yet,
mm,
but look at what you just did.
mm.
I've been, since probably I started the business in March. So since probably May or June, I've been able to say that I am creating a livelihood for myself and my family,
Yeah,
that I'm not relying on anyone else to do, that I'm in full control over. And it's only going to build, right? It's only just beginning. So I think knowing where you came from and knowing where you're at, and even if things go like this,
yeah,
you're in a low point, like, hey, you've done it before, you're going to do it again. You just have to figure out how to get there within the moment that you're in right now. And yes, again, the guidance is very important, right?
mm.
If you've never lost 150 pounds before, you're going to need some guidance from multiple experts on how to do that. But you can, if you've started something new before with a goal and reached a goal before, you can do just about anything. Again, you set your mind to, which is why those lofty goals are important, as we talked about. But yeah, those small wins show us how far we've come,
Mm.
and show us that we can accomplish things that we do set our mind to. We've accomplished this one. Okay, now it's time to go get the next one.
It's almost like your ego needs a little evidence. Every now and
Yes,
then you need a little hit of evidence, of real hard evidence. Like I can cheerlead for myself so far, but then I need a little bit of evidence, hard facts. And then
yes,
that's what supports that along the way.
100%. Yeah,
Yeah,
we've
yeah,
got to that some of that self fulfillment,
yeah,
and even better if it comes from somebody else. If it,
yeah.
if you get on an awesome podcast and someone tells you how much they enjoy it, like
Yeah.
just like this,
Are you
it
kidding me?
feels,
I was getting ready to start clapping and
yeah.
cheering for you there, and
That-
I put my pad down ready to cheer you because I'm so proud of you for the journey that you've made in such a short
yeah.
time.
Well,
Absolutely. And
well,
I
thank you.
do want to say what I love about you, and I hear it in your language is you've taken so many of those tenets that you learned in your physical therapy journey and in your education for physical therapy and incorporated them in really a mindset and a lifestyle. I hear you talking about setting the goals and having benchmarks and then celebrate. Those are great. You've just taken those really physical therapy type language and words and incorporated them into a business model and
Mm,
incorporated them into a lifestyle, which is so beautiful. I love the idea of not you're not starting from scratch, you're starting from experience, and you're just tailoring your experience to a whole new platform. So I applaud you for that. That's really cool. And I just think that having that mindset will take you so far.
Well, thank you. And it's been a practice. Like
Yeah.
I said, it's been a practice for me. And I think a big reason why I like to preach it is deep down, I've always believed that, right? We
Mm,
all, you're always told you can do anything you set your mind to and all that good stuff. But I think that it gets to a point where we have to talk the talk and walk the walk,
mm.
right? And you have to keep talking the talk and walking the walk to continue to prove it to yourself and hit those benchmarks and feed that ego every once in a while, again, to just help prove to yourself that you can get where you want to be. And actually, this goes back to one of your recent episodes about self talk, right? The way that we carry ourselves, the way
Mm,
that we talk to ourselves, the light in which we put ourselves
mm.
has a lot to do with how we feel and how we look at ourselves, and is going to project off of us and is going to change the way other people look at ourselves, look at
Absolutely.
us.
Absolutely.
um, so some of it is almost saying it and doing it simply to convince convince myself, or to convince
Mhm.
ourselves that we are doing that,
Yeah.
doing X, Y, and Z. But it's definitely been a practice. It's something that I'm definitely new at, but I also do it to try to get information and education to people that they're really going to benefit from.
Mm.
And I get way more benefit out of that than building myself up. But if I get to do both in the process, you know, that's a win-win, because I get to help people, give them information they need, and help them achieve something that they really need to be achieving in their lives. And I also get some of those added benefits that we've talked about as well.
Well, your generous nature just it comes pouring out of you. It's very apparent. You're very easy to read in that regard. So that's so awesome. And I think that's why people are drawn to you as well. So for those
Thank you.
listeners who maybe are hearing a story that sounds familiar to themselves and they're thinking, I've always wanted to take this big leap, whether it's a new direction for my business or leaving a business or a new direction for my health, what advice do you have in terms of how the mindset that you keep talking about? What is it about that you can suggest for just starting small about changing your mindset?
Yeah, just do it.
Yeah.
You just have to do it. If it's something that you want to do, that, so like me, for example, I've been a physical therapist for a little over 5 years. It was right about the 5 year mark when um, I started venturing out on my own. I The physical therapy part isn't the hard part, right? So
Mm,
if you have been in a certain area of business or a certain area of industry for your whole career, but you're thinking about going it on your own, you know, the thing that you're good at, you're going to be able to do. So just go get some guidance on
mm,
how to do the stuff that you don't know how to do, and just do it.
mm,
Because if you're good at what you do, and honestly, even if you're mediocre at
mm.
what you do, but people find value in it, and you're able to show people the value in it, and you're able to help them get what they want out of working with you, and see that value, not just say, oh, I think this is value, but then show them that value. Just do it.
That's great.
That's all part of that mindset, right? We talked about why the lofty goals matter and all of that. My one of the best piece of advice that my coaches have given me is take consistent, imperfect action.
Oh, I love it. Oh, I
You
like that.
the people that are consuming your product, whatever that might be, are not experts in that product, right? And even people out there that are, like, people that you're connected with that do what you do, are likely not just going to sit there and like ridicule every little thing that you do and say, because they are focused on what they're doing, right?
Hmm.
And you're going to be more successful, by the way, if you just focus on what you're doing. Focus on the opportunities in front of you and what you're doing, and don't worry about comparing yourself to other people. So just take that action. And even if you're doing a video and you're stuttering over what you're trying to say and you don't get it out perfectly, but you get the information out there, and it's a value to people, and you can show people that it's a value to them, just do it and get it out there. And that mindset is huge. So just take it, just take the action and do it. If you're thinking about it, if you're mulling around over it a little bit, just do it. You're going to be so glad you did. I did it because I felt like I had no choice. I was all of a sudden just out of a job that I thought initially I was going to be able to go back to, but wound up not being able to. And I'm so glad I took this action, because by the time it came out that my position was no longer going to be there for the foreseeable future, I already had clients. I was already seeing my own clients and producing my own income.
It's great.
So yeah, you just have to do it. You got to take that step. Start with the small step. That's fine. All those things that we've talked about up to this point are important too, but just do it.
Take consistent, imperfect action.
You
Love
got
it.
You
Love
got it.
it.
Shout out to Uncaged Clinician, my business coaches. I gotta shout them out. They've been fantastic. They've been awesome.
That's awesome.
I owe those guys a lot. So, but yeah, it's fantastic advice in any area of your life, but especially in business.
So cool.
Just take that imperfect action.
So I was going to actually, that's a great lead up to the next question. I was going to say, who's inspired you in that? Well, let's start in the health and wellness arena. Who are kind of some of your big inspirations in that field?
Yeah. I've definitely had some great influences in the past. Just some of the folks, I mentioned Nick Thompson, the athletic trainer at my high school. He was one that helped me kind of figure out the passion, and figure out push me toward the doctorate in physical therapy track instead of the athletic training track to get to physical therapy, which was great advice. It helped me get to where I wanted to be sooner, and helped me grow that passion a little bit. I've definitely had some coworkers in the past that have shown me a lot when I was a younger clinician, and helped, took me under their wing a little bit, and taught me a lot of different things. But more recently, those coaches that I've signed on with, and I got to know them a little bit before they became my mentors in my business, and they are the ones that have definitely helped shift my mindset. Because even some of the things I hear myself saying to you right now, and some of those things that I've talked about in those interviews I did over this past week, I don't think 2 or 3 years ago I would have said a lot of those things. Cool. I really don't think that would have been part of my vocabulary or even my mindset without those guys showing me the way, and the other members of my group, the mastermind group that I'm a part of. Those folks have definitely changed the way that I see myself, changed the way I approach my business, but they've also helped reinforce all those things that I felt so strongly about throughout my career, and shown me that those are 100% possible within my field, which I always knew was true. But again, sometimes you just need that push, that kick in the pants of, if you think that's true and you're passionate about that, then go make it happen. And from a business side of things, here's how you do that. So, those guys have been super influential in helping me do that.
So the value of mentors and the value of getting around other people, the community that you're around who are like-minded and can push you a little bit further than you think you can go.
Yes. You can't put a value on those few things you just mentioned.
Yeah.
Because again, in whatever journey you're starting out on, yes, you just need to do it. You need to get it in your head that I just have to do this, especially if it's something that keeps coming up over and over again. Just go for it. But you need the guidance, you need the mentorship, and you need a community.
Yeah.
And you're gonna thrive within a community, even if you're not like an extrovert type, right? I'm very extroverted, and even the people that aren't thrive in that community because they have other people they trust, other people that are going through the same things they're going through,
Yeah.
that can help them get where they want to be and work through those struggles together.
Yeah, and I found the same thing, that sometimes breaking into a community like that is terrifying if you've never done something like that before. If you don't feel like you don't speak the language and you don't know the rules, but just being vulnerable enough to take that leap, and once again just do it, like you said, consistent imperfect action, just showing up with the people that you need to be around. I don't know if you've noticed this too, but it just opens up and kind of invites more of the same. You just meet more
Yes.
and more people are attracted to you. I mean, that's how I came to know you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. And vice versa.
Yeah.
Yeah. And vice versa. It goes back to what we already discussed near the start of the pod today, that you 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 kind of give what you get, right? Like it goes both ways. And by sharing what you're passionate about, and diving into what you're passionate about, but having that direction and people to go through that process with you, you're going to be successful in that. And those dominoes that start falling are evidence of that,
So cool.
right?
So
So
cool.
this part of our conversation, we just brought it all the way back.
We did. It was all part of the bigger plan here.
We brought it all the way back here because it's all just meshes so perfectly together.
So good. So good. So before I ask you my final two questions, please tell our audience where we can find you and how we can learn more about you.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so again, my name is Dr. Phil Finemore, owner and founder of WorkFitMe, mobile concierge physical therapy, where I help busy Maine professionals maximize their physical performance so they can live a happy, healthy, and wealthy life doing what they love with who they love. You can find me online at workfitme.com. Also at WorkFitMe on all social media platforms. On Facebook, you can just search WorkFitMe and should pop up. I also put almost all my content I put on my own personal Facebook page winds up on the WorkFitMe social media pages. But if you search Phil Finemore, Finemore, I should come up, and more than happy to connect with folks out there so that they can get some of the information that I put out on those platforms. So those are the best ways to get a hold of me and see what's going on.
Very cool. Thank you. Well, definitely, I highly recommend you look Phil up, because there's some wonderful free content on his Facebook page, and also great resources to other people who are doing really great things in our state and beyond. So that's really cool.
Definitely.
So my question to you is, what is Phil Finemore's superpower?
What is my superpower?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's a great question. Because again, it's something that we've touched on and talked about a little bit with my coaches that I just mentioned that have been so influential. I think my superpower is my passion for helping people by doing what I love to do.
Cool.
I helping people is why I got into the medical field in general. And I chose physical therapy because I thought it was the most personable way to help people in the medical field. I get to spend an hour with everybody I'm with, however many times per week that work together, which I love almost more than providing the care. Just being around people, getting to know them, getting to know what drives them, getting to know what they do, what they're passionate about. So yeah, I'm passionate about helping people with what I'm passionate about, which is cool. the being a healthcare provider, specifically being a physical therapist, and using those tools to help people not only treat things that are very treatable, that a lot of people aren't aware are very, very treatable, but also prevent those things from happening or ever coming back for those folks.
So cool. I can totally see that in you. You just exude that as your superpower. Absolutely. I think we do, to be fair. You've mentioned your coaches so many times. Let's give
Mm,
them a proper shout out. Who are they and how can we find them? Because it sounds like
yeah,
they've been such a great resource for you.
they have been. Yeah. Uncaged Clinician is the group. So they have a podcast called the Uncaged Clinician
Cool.
podcast. Definitely check that out. Kind of short and sweet episodes. I think they're all between like 10, 15, 20 minutes. I think the longest one I've seen is like 25 minutes or so,
Cool.
which is great. A lot of real good information in a short amount of time for all those busy professionals out there that already, don't have a ton of time. Their names are Josh Payne, David Bailiff, and Kevin DeGroot. Um, they also have a Facebook group called the Uncaged Clinician. Um, and yeah, you can find them on social media either by their names or through the Uncaged Clinician business.
Very cool. And then we'll definitely make sure, along with all of Dr. Finemore's contact information, we'll put them in the show notes too, so that people
Yeah,
can find them as well, support them.
awesome.
Okay, we've come to our final question.
All right.
I had, there was so much more, Phil, that I wanted to talk to you about. We didn't even get to it. So I didn't get to mention your beautiful family. But what I do want to ask is, if all of this work that you've done disappears one day and all of these really cool lives, Facebook lives that you've brought to the world disappear, and you were to leave Brielle with Brielle's your beautiful daughter, who is,
Yeah.
how old is she now?
She's 19 months old.
19 months. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the apple of your eye. If you were
Yeah.
to leave her with one piece of information to take forward with her into her life, one little nugget of support, what would you say?
Oh man. That's deep, Taryn. I that's a great question. Um, I think I would have to say go after what you're passionate about with all your heart. Do it in an educated way. Don't go after it blind. But if you're truly passionate about something and you look into it and find that with more information that's truly still what you're passionate about, to just go get it. Um, I consider myself very lucky that I, right out of high school, right in my, between my junior and senior of high school, I chose physical therapy as my career field and never changed it. And I think the average college student changes their major 2.5 times or something like that. And I was just on the path. I found the most efficient and even cost effective way to get there that I could find,
Mm.
and got to being able to work with and help people as soon as I could. And again, it was calculated because I wanted to make sure that I truly did love it as much as I thought that I would. So I think that would be the nugget: is if you're passionate about it and you find that with a little bit of thought, a little bit of prayer, that's for you, go get it.
Love it. Love it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your time with us this evening. It really is such a pleasure getting to know you better and to introduce you to this audience. And I just know that so many people are going to find so much value from this conversation. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity. This has been a fantastic conversation. As I said, I love conversations like this because it gets my juices flowing a little bit. I learned some things in this conversation. I think I learned some things about myself,
Awesome.
which is really cool. So
Super cool.
thank you. I can't thank you enough for the opportunity. This has been great.
Super, super. And thank you to all of you for joining us this hour. I'm grateful to all of you for keeping an open mind and learning from all different resources and maybe finding out something new about yourself along the way. And next week, we're excited for Leaders Leading Leaders. That's going to be our next solo episode. And I do have 2 favors to ask of my incredible audience. Number one, please join me on our new private Facebook group, which is so exciting, the Business of Happiness Hive. And right after this, I'm going to be asking Dr. Phil's permission. Not fair, Dr. Phil, but if we can use some of our snippets before and after our show, we've had some little conversations that maybe we can give you some outtakes in the private Facebook group. And then the second favor is leave us, please, a review on iTunes or Spotify, because the more people who hear about us, the more people we can support and help in the greater world and the greater community we can build for ourselves here. So until then, thank you again. We look forward to hearing from you next week and to seeing you next week. And until then, today is going to be a great day. Bye-bye.